Casey Schmitt stole the show again, going 4 for 4, setting all kinds of records for a Giants player in his first 3 games, hitting a 442-foot homer, making a 93-mile-an-hour throw. We'll get into all the numbers about the exciting Giants rookie Casey Schmitt and what it means about the future for this organization.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button right now if you're watching on YouTube. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you know what else is guaranteed is that we're going to spend quite a bit of time today talking about Mr. Casey Schmitt, who just had another phenomenal game. I mean, he had a better game than his first game, and his first game was so impressive. And yesterday, in a win, 6-2 against the D-backs, he had his fingerprints all over it at the plate and in the field at shortstop, where he finally got a lot of action with the heavy ground ball pitcher Alex Cobb, who, oh, by the way, lowered his ERA to an MLB best, at least NL best, but I believe MLB best 1.70. And so we'll get into Cobb later. But the starting point tonight is Casey Schmitt, who goes 4 for 4 and 8 hits in his first 3 games, ties a Giants record with Willie McCovey for the most hits in a Giants player's first 3 games. And there's all kinds of those types of numbers that we can throw out there. But really, I mean, I just want to talk about how he hit a 443-foot home run that was hit 112 miles an hour, which was the third hardest hit ball by the Giants this season. He also made a 93-mile-an-hour throw. I could be giving you decibel points here. It was 111.6 off the bat, which we round to 112. And one of the throws he made was 92.7 miles an hour from the shortstop position, which made it the second fastest infield assist throw in the majors this season. And so what all that jargon means, as an infielder, only one time has an infielder this season in the big leagues made a harder throw in getting an out. And so not only that, but Schmitt had an infield single in which he ran, in terms of the sprint speed, 29.5 feet per second, which is considered elite. Or it's, I think 30 feet per second is what they consider elite, and he was right on the cusp of that. So just a tick below it, 5 ticks, I guess, below it, but close to it. So what we're seeing is the tools, right? The tools on display. The power, which I think a lot of people kind of, I don't know, just in general in the prospect community, I don't know that people really gave him credit for his ability to hit for power, but so far in 3 games, we've seen the not only raw power, but the ability to get to that power in the games. So I do just want to, before I go over the top here with my praise of Casey Schmitt, I do just want to mention he's not going to keep this up, right? Like, he's hitting 667 on base, meaning no walks. I don't even know how to pronounce this. A 1,333 slugging percentage. It's an 845 weighted on base average. It's a 449 weighted runs created plus. So all of these numbers are ridiculous. He's made 100% zone contact. He has not swung and missed at a pitch in the strike zone. That's actually probably one of the more intriguing numbers of all the numbers I just mentioned, because all the other numbers I just mentioned, those obviously are not going to last. But the fact that he's making contact on pitches in the zone at 100% rate is a good sign. His chase rate is a little bit worse than average. It's like 37%. I don't know exactly what league average is right now, but it's usually, I think it's like 33, 32%. So a little bit of chase, but he's only struck out 8% of the time. We're talking a 12 plate appearance sample. So this is obviously too small of a sample to draw pretty much any conclusions. And so right now we're just going off of pure kind of emotion and excitement about what we're seeing. And why not? Why not get a little bit irrational, and why not dream a little bit on a guy like this? The Giants, part of what makes me believe in Casey Schmitt, like a big part of what makes me believe in him, is knowing that internally the Giants value him very highly. Whereas like he wasn't a guy who was in the top even 100 on a lot of prospect lists that came out this year. And he was on some, but towards the back end. But certainly he wasn't he's not a consensus top prospect. And what I'm saying is part of what makes me really believe in him is that the Giants internally, from what we've heard, this is not me having inside information. I think it's Alex Pavlovich has mentioned this a few times, that basically the Giants view him much higher than that and consider him arguably a better prospect than Marco Luciano. And Marco Luciano is a guy who has consistently rated in the top 20 and even sometimes top 10 on prospect lists. He's fallen somewhat due to last year having an injury and not performing well after he came back from his injury. But the fact that they possibly view Schmidt as a better prospect than Luciano, and that the prospect community has frequently viewed Luciano as a top 20 prospect, kind of just tells you how they view Casey Schmitt. And so far in 3 games, we've seen the very best of Casey Schmitt. And so, I mean, offensively, he's basically done no wrong. He did have that one strikeout. I believe he just has one strikeout in game number 1 or game number 2, where he chased a pitch like a slider down in the zone. But other than that, anything in the zone, like I said, he's made 100% contact on pitches in the zone, and he's just turned them into hits. And he's got a double, he's got the 2 home runs, and then defensively at shortstop, I mean, the arm. Let's not sleep on the fact that, like I said, it was one of the throws he made last night was the second hardest throw by an infielder this season. I think the one who it was the O'Neal Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates, who just has ridiculous tools, and people drool over the tools of O'Neal Cruz, including his arm at the shortstop position. And Casey Schmitt just basically, I don't know how far below O'Neal Cruz this throw was last night, but again, it's just kind of people sleeping on the tools. Like the home run he hit, 443 feet, is not a wall scraper. I mean, it was in the second deck. And like I said, also, it was the 3rd hardest hit ball of the season by the Giants. And so, and it's not just the arm. I just thought there was one play that he didn't make. It wasn't an easy play by any means, and I don't believe he was given an error on the play. But he kind of got handcuffed a little bit, probably should have backhanded the ball. There was a shot of him and Crawford, like immediately after the inning ended, Casey Schmitt went right up to Brandon Crawford, who was sitting on the dugout steps, and Schmitt just sat himself right next to Crawford, and they started talking about that play. And Crawford was kind of demonstrating the backhand, and Schmitt was kind of demonstrating the forehand and how it kind of tied him up, and it led to a play not being made. But it wasn't routine by any means, but all the other plays that Schmitt got, and he got quite a few, like 4 or 5 at least plays in this game, he made with ease and smoothness and with that arm. It's exciting. He's an exciting player, and like I've said before in recent episodes, the Giants haven't had a stud kind of position player, a guy. Again, he's not considered by the prospect community to be a top prospect, but I think he has the potential to be a really good player. And obviously we've seen that so far. So coming up in just a minute, we will talk more about Schmidt, but I also want to get into some recent trends with the Giants, and also how about just giving a little credit to Alex Cobb for leading, is it the major leagues in earned run average? And he's just been on a roll lately. So we will get into all of that in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by So Rare. Our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. So Rare recently partnered with MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez to serve as brand ambassadors. Head to sorare.com/lockedon, that's spelled SORARE.com, to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. All right, as promised, more Casey Schmitt talk, more Alex Cobb talk, and also some trends. How about the strikeout trends? I've got some comments on that. You certainly remember how the strikeouts were such a big problem for the Giants. Well, guess what? As I said, it wasn't going to last and it was going to normalize, and that's what's happening, and I've got numbers to prove it. So we'll get into that and much more. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we're going to be breaking down the final 3 games of this series. I think I'm not just saying it to say it, that every series is big, but right now they are, given that the Giants are under 500 and you're playing a team that I think you need to finish ahead of the D-backs if you want to make the postseason. And so D-backs are currently ahead of the Giants, so it's a big series. Winning game 1 of a 4-game series, a nice first step. But ideally, I mean, if you can take 3 out of 4 or sweep, that would just go a long way for momentum for the San Francisco Giants and just go a long way in the standings. So the Giants play the D-backs tonight at 6:40 Pacific. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So yes, just the last thing I want to say about Schmidt for now. I mean, we're hopefully going to be talking about him for the next 10 plus years on this show, but just the attitude and he's just comfortable in his own skin. And the players, like Alex Cobb is out here just talking about how the players recognize, it's like game recognizes game, and it's not just game, it's the personality and the comfort. And you've got big leaguers like Alex Cobb just saying, like, the dude is a stud and he belongs here. And Brandon Crawford, like, before Schmidt even played a major league game, compared him to Nolan Arenado defensively. And so, yeah, it's kind of crazy. If I was a prospect ranking person, I would have him on that top 100 for sure. And I mean, I wouldn't have him like in the top 10. I don't know. I just think I don't understand how he wasn't universally a top 100 prospect after the season he had last year. We'll see. And also it's like nobody's a finished product. Development, like, part of his issues have been a little bit, needs to be a little bit more patient, like not swinging, chasing out of the zone, and he's working on that. And in his last 10 games in AAA, his walk rate was over 10%. In his first, 20-something games, his walk rate was 1%. And so he's showing improvement in that regard. He hasn't walked yet in the majors, but that's something to watch. Like, can he lay off when they start throwing him sliders in the dirt? Can he lay off and take his walks when they're not throwing him strikes? That'll be something to watch for. But just the attitude, he just seems to have that it factor that you look for, and also the fun factor that is so enjoyable and infectious in the dugout and as a fan to watch. So let's turn our attention to Alex Cobb, who made the start last night and did what he's just done in 3 out of his last 4 outings, which is not allow a single run. And the only runs he allowed in his last 4 outings were in Mexico City, and he had a pretty darn good start considering the circumstances. It was Mania who started the game that ended up, 16-11. But for Cobb, I mean, he only allowed, I'll look at the numbers in a minute, but I don't, like 3 runs in that start in Mexico City. But other than that, his last 3 starts are a complete game shutout, 7 innings of no-run baseball, and then last night, 7 1/3 innings, no runs. 7 hits and only 3 strikeouts, a little bit low on the strikeout total, maybe uncharacteristically low for Cobb, but yeah, a 1.70 earned run average. We're going to look at where does that rank in all of Major League Baseball. As I load that number, I'm looking at team numbers. I got to look at player numbers, of course. Where does the ERA rank among all players in Major League Baseball? It ranks, oh my gosh, I've got a 0 innings limit. I'm sorry. Among qualified pitchers, Alex Cobb's 1.70 ERA is first in the National League. There are 2 pitchers in the American League, Sonny Gray and Eduardo Rodriguez, who have lower ERAs. But in the National League, Alex Cobb's 1.70 ERA is best. So it's not all about ERA, and in fact, to be clear, the expected ERA for Alex Cobb is actually somewhat high. It's 3.75, and last year for Alex Cobb, the expected ERA, why is it's not showing up on my screen? I don't know what's going on. Right now, Fangraphs is malfunctioning for me, and it's affecting the show. I apologize. But last year, the expected ERA for Cobb was really low, and this year, it's actually a little bit higher right now. But again, we're early in the season, and so weirdness happens, and I'm not worried or anything about Alex Cobb. Certainly, I'm here to sing his praises. So the fielding independent pitching is 2.97. The expected fielding independent pitching is 3.12. Ground ball rate, this is a big one. If we search who has the best ground ball rate in the major leagues, guess what? Alex Cobb, number 1 at 64.1%. So this is when the ball is put in play, i.e. not a strikeout or a walk or a hit by pitch, but the ball is put into the field of play. 64% of those balls that are put in play are on the ground. And so all the more reason it is great to have Casey Schmitt out there at short. You've got J.D. Davis playing his improved defense, although he has kind of fallen back a little bit in the last couple weeks, I would say. Tyro Estrada, I think, is really, really solid at second base. And then Lamont Wade Jr. has played a good first base as well. And so, I recently received a mailbag question like, why do the Giants focus on ground ball pitchers and then de-emphasize defense? I don't think that there's a de-emphasis on defense. I think last year it just kind of unexpectedly they had problems. And when guys got hurt, they didn't really have great solutions. And they ended up more so in the outfield with the likes of like Yermin Mercedes playing left field, just kind of ridiculous. But with Crawford and, VR, now with Schmidt and Crawford and Davis playing better defensively and Estrada and Wade, I see no true weakness there. And if J.D. Davis reverts and ends up not being great defensively, then perhaps that pushes Schmidt to third base, his kind of natural position, and Crawford at short and Estrada at second. And so suddenly you're looking at a potentially just like really good infield defense with a guy like Cobb who's first in the majors in ground ball rate. And guess who's third in the majors in ground ball rate? It's Logan Webb at 59.9%. If we look at the league average here is 43%. So these guys are much higher than that. Cobb at 64, Webb at 59.9, essentially 60%. So that's nice. Ground balls, hard to do a lot of damage on ground balls, right? That's the thing, is that even if they're hits, they're not home runs and stuff. They're just singles usually. And so it's good to keep the ball on the ground. It's good to strike people out. And I don't know, just a tip of the cap to Alex Cobb, who, coming into the season looked like the Giants' number 2 starter. And there was some people who had some snarkiness about that. And also, it kind of validates the peripheral numbers from last year when Cobb had a modest kind of 3.73 ERA, but all season people like me were ranting and raving about how the peripheral numbers were so much better. He deserved better results. The fielding independent pitching 2.80, the expected fielding independent pitching 2.89, and this year those numbers are about the same, but the ERA comes in at 1.70. And so if we were to combine those two seasons, Alex Cobb in his Giants career has a 3.24 earned run average, and the peripherals even suggest that there's room for improvement upon that into the kind of high twos, the high twos, like 2.90 or something. And he's at 3.24, which I would imagine I'm not going to spend the time as I already did, like looking something up as I'm talking. But a 3.24 ERA over the last two seasons combined, I would imagine it's not going to be like the best, but it's going to be one of the better earned run averages over the last couple of seasons combined. So Alex Cobb truly is pitching like a number 2 starter, and you've got Logan Webb, you've got DeSclafani having a major rebound season. His last start notwithstanding wasn't great, but still the numbers look really good even with a blow-up outing. That's how good his first handful, or more than handful, his first 7 starts were. And then you've got Alex Wood potentially coming back maybe even today. I think John Brebbia is going to start this game today, but I believe there's a possibility that Alex Wood ends up following John Brebbia because Alex Wood isn't quite built up to take on a starter's workload. And so having an opener and then using Alex Wood is perhaps something that they're going to do. And then if you want to hear my opinions on Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling, you can check out yesterday's episode when I got into that in tremendous detail, basically saying I don't think they should be in this rotation right now. And you've got youngsters who could potentially be given a shot to take. Basically, you'd only need one more spot. If you've got Webb, Cobb, DeSclafani, Wood, and then who else? And so coming up in just a minute, guess what? Kyle Harrison made another start in AAA last night. His previous start was so good, he didn't walk anybody, and it was must watch. How does he perform in his next start? Can he have another no walk start? And if he does, that would possibly put him in line for an immediate promotion, maybe in his next turnaround. And so how did he do last night? We'll get into it in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event, whether it's the Giants or you're traveling on the road and visiting, watching the Giants play in a visiting stadium or going to the theater or going to a concert, it shouldn't have to be so stressful. And one of the things for me is not having an image of what the view looks like from the seat is really kind of disconcerting when I'm going to a new venue that I haven't seen before. I don't know, just looking at a little graph of the stadium maybe isn't enough. And so having an actual image from that seat is excellent. And also, I'm always worried about getting the best price and afraid that I'm going to find cheaper tickets and that I am going to have regrets. But with Game Time, all of those are solved. You get images of seat views, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, as promised, just a little update on top pitching prospect Kyle Harrison. I mean, we've already seen Casey Schmitt get promoted to the major leagues, and could we see Kyle Harrison close behind? We very well could. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday will hear us breaking down the final 3 games of this series. It becomes a 3-game series now. You've played one, and if you win, just win the series. The remaining 3, 2 out of 3, and it would be a 3 out of 4, and the Giants would take that. Or how about sweep them? So the Giants play the D-backs tonight at 6:40 Pacific. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So yes, I do want to mention Kyle Harrison made this start, and I turned it on. It was must watch because of what I said, that for his first, whatever it was, 7, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 starts, he had a walk rate of, what was that walk rate? It was 27.3%, which is about 3 times higher than it needs to be. If you're over 10, you're kind of walking too many guys, borderline. But if you're at 10%, but if you're at 27%, it's just absurd. You're walking way too many guys. The thing is, though, during that stretch, he did have a 35% strikeout rate. So imagine that. If you combine 35% plus the 27% walk rate, we're looking at 62% of all the batters that he faced over his first 6 starts. 62% of those plate appearances resulted in a strikeout or a walk. And so we talk about 3 true outcomes. For Kyle Harrison, it's 2 true outcomes because he has not allowed a homer despite pitching in a lively offensive environment in the Pacific Coast League. And so that's a good news. The strikeout rate is good news. The home run rate is good news. Hitters only hit 179 against him during that 6-game sample that I'm talking about. But what happened was, in his most recent outing before last night, what he did was he struck out 58% of the hitters he faced in that outing, and he walked 0. Nobody. And so it was oh my gosh, if this guy can just simply throw strikes, he's a big leaguer, imminently. And so he had a start last night, and it was a must-watch start because the question was, can he kind of back that up? So somewhat unfortunately, I suppose, what ended up happening is that he walked 3 in 3 2/3 innings, and that walk rate came out to 17.6%. So obviously better, a little bit better. His totals now, including the outing where he walked 0, his total strikeout rate in AAA this year in 8 starts is 22.6%. So that's more than, like I said, 10% is even borderline too high. So certainly, you're double that and more. But the strikeout rate overall is 39.6%. He is striking out 40. If you round that, that's 40% of the batters that he's faced. So again, about 63% of the batters that he's faced all season in AAA in 8 starts, 63% have either struck out or walked. And if we go back to his most recent, 4 starts, his strikeout rate is 51.7%. That is just absurd. He's literally struck out over half of every single batter that he's faced over his last 4 starts. During that time, the ERA is 2.51, not surprisingly. Hitters have only hit 109 against him. I don't see the on-base and slugging averages, which I would want, but the problem is the walk rate during that 4-start stretch is 19%. And so he's so close. If he can simply throw, just command a little bit better, and arguably, you could possibly just make the case that these strikeout numbers are so absurdly good that you kind of just call him up and live with the walks and let him try to figure it out at the big league level. I think that's unlikely. I think they want to just see him figure out the command issue. But man, a 52% strikeout rate over his most recent 4 starts. How many hitters is that? He's faced 58 hitters over that span, and he has struck out 30 of them. It's just kind of unbelievable. He's walked 11. He's also hit 1, only 1 wild pitch, 4 earned runs. Again, no homer, 5 hits allowed total. It's just kind of crazy. And it doesn't show me doubles and triples, but it does show me that 0 home runs. So anyway, unfortunately, he didn't have the no walk outing that no walk, one walk outing I was hoping that he would have, but he continued to show the strikeout stuff with a strikeout rate last night in that outing of 47%. He faced 17 hitters and he struck out 8. So he's close. I don't think Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling are going to last much longer in the rotation, if at all. For now, I think they're not just going to DFA them, but Keaton Winn is another guy to watch, as we discussed yesterday. But that's your update on Kyle Harrison, and that's all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday will be breaking down this key 3-game series. I mean 3 more games in Arizona. You're probably going to see some roster moves made. I mean, Brandon Crawford coming off the IL potentially. Does that mean David VR gets optioned? Alex Wood coming off the IL. To me, that's probably a Tristan Beck option. And then who knows? Like maybe one of these young pitchers like Harrison or Keaton Winn perhaps gets the call at some point. So a lot will be breaking down that the Everydayers will hear on Monday. And tonight, the Giants play the D-backs at 6:40 Pacific. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. It's John Brebbia against a right-handed pitcher, Ryan Nelson, who doesn't have great numbers. And so hopefully the Giants can take advantage of that and continue. I just realized I forgot to discuss the strikeout stuff. So the Everydayers on Monday will hear more about the Giants' strikeout rate being in decline and getting a lot lower in recent weeks. So once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thanks in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday, hopefully talking about some good results for the Giants. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.